Hi, everybody. I hope you're doing well today. We'll just give it a couple more minutes. We've got some people continuing to join us. All right. So my name is Tara Burke, and I'm the coordinator of admissions and recruitment here at the College of Veterinary Medicine at the University of Arizona.
And hi, everyone. My name is Lori Leong. I am the admissions specialist for the College of Veterinary Medicine.
We're happy to have you guys here today. All right, so we've got a presentation to share with you, and then because of the large number of attendees, if you can maybe just hold your questions or you can put them in the chat and we'll do our best to answer them during the time that we have today. All right, but I will share my screen with you all. Okay. So again, welcome to University of Arizona College of Veterinary Medicine. As many of you probably know, we are a new program. We are admitting our first class this fall. We're very excited about that. Okay, so today we're going to talk about our college, the requirements for admission, which have changed a little bit since last year. Just be aware of that if you applied last year. And we'll talk about how to apply, and then we will do a virtual tour of our facilities. So we are the first new veterinary medicine program at a public land grant university in over 40 years. So students in our program will experience a real-world learning in clinical settings that care for companion animal, large animal, and exotic species. So it is very much a holistic program, very much of a generalist program, although there will be some opportunities for you to kind of hone your skills in certain areas, and we'll talk about that later. We do have a focus on active learning and a team-based curriculum, and we'll talk about that too. And so our goal is to prepare you guys to be ready to go day one, the day that you graduate. You can get a job and feel really confident in your skill set. So our history, we were granted provisional accreditation a little while ago. That was contingent upon us admitting our first class, which we've now done. We have a class of 110 students starting in the fall. Yeah, so we're excited about that. So our mission is to lead the profession as a student-centered program focused on developing career-ready veterinarians who will live healthy, meaningful lives and serve society. And I can say that's 100% across the board true. Our faculty embody this mission, our staff, and we expect that our students will as well. And in terms of our values, we're really, we want to make sure that everybody who joins us, be it as a faculty member, staff, or student, that we are creating this inclusive environment, fostering adaptive and innovative learners who will be successful leaders in the field of veterinary medicine. Okay, so what makes us unique? A couple of things that you may know, or maybe not. We have a 3-year program. So you will be going to school year-round if you were to join our program. This model does a couple of things. Of course, it gets you guys working and out in the field faster. You'll be earning a salary sooner. And also it avoids that kind of summer slump where you kind of tend to forget what you learned the semester before. We do also offer this team-based learning approach. That means that we're lecture free. And I know that might be hard to comprehend. There are some great resources out there if you want to Google team-based learning to learn more about it. But this model does prove that students really do learn better and retain the information better than they would if they were participating in more of a typically structured class where you're just kind of sitting there absorbing a bunch of information. And also what makes us somewhat different is that we have a distributive clinical model. There's no veterinary hospital. We don't plan to have a veterinary hospital. Instead, we have partnerships with 250 partners, and we're expanding that. So we'll talk more about that later. But we feel that way students, not only you'll get more hands-on practice in that model, and then you'll also actually get to be meeting potential employers as well. So it's a great way for you to network that entire year before you graduate, and it'll probably increase the likelihood that you will, find a job that you really like, or at least you will know what kind of setting works for you. Whereas if you're just in a hospital environment, that's all you're exposed to, you may think you want to work in one type of environment, but until you experience it, you may not really know. So we do think that this is a great way for you guys, not only to really put your skills into practice that you learned during the first years of the program, but also to better understand the environment of VetNet and kind of get a feel for what might really work for you. So we've got a couple of locations. We have our main campus out in Oro Valley, which is a little bit northwest of Tucson, like maybe 13 miles. That's where most of our classes take place. We do also have something called the Campus Agricultural Center, which is more in town. It's just a few miles away from the main campus at University of Arizona. That's where you'll be working with live animals. For Oro Valley, you will have cadavers and simulated animals. At the Campus Agricultural Center and other facilities will have live animals. And there's something called the Health Science Innovation Building, which is a super cool, brand new building. Many of the health professions at University of Arizona use it, and that's where you will use a simulation lab. So like I said, we do have this distributive model. Our third year is that clinical year. The clerkships are basically 4 weeks long. There is a NAVLE prep block built into that, so everybody will have a chance for dedicated study time for the NAVLE. And that is instructor-led, so it's not like you're on your own. In addition, there are 7 core rotations and 4 elective rotations. And you can choose to go back to a clinic you've previously worked at, or perhaps you have a classmate who was working in a clinical setting and they've got you excited about that setting and they think that maybe it's a good fit for you. That's an option that you could explore as well. Okay, so requirements of getting in. So basic requirements, we have 42 prerequisite credits that you need to have taken. So you don't have to have a bachelor's degree. It is preferred, but it's not strictly required. You just need to have completed your prerequisites for us. You do need a 3.0 GPA, and we calculate GPA in a couple of ways. There's the prerequisite GPA that's specific to our requirements. There's the overall GPA that VMCAS calculates, and there's the science GPA that VMCAS also calculates. And just so that you know, we will do a review if one of your GPAs or 2 or even 3 falls a little bit short, like if you're in that 275 to 299 range, we will still review your application and still consider you for admission. We don't require the GRE. We're not looking at GRE scores. So if you submit them through VMCAS, that's fine, but nobody on the admissions committee will actually see those scores. We will suppress those scores since we really feel strongly that the GRE is just not predictive of your performance in VetNet school. And of course, 3 letters of recommendation. That's per VMCAS. You can, I believe, submit up to 6 if you want. That's not necessarily a benefit. I would prefer 3 strong letters versus 5 or 6 kind of mediocre ones. We don't have any sort of animal or vet hours requirement. We do expect that our applicants will have worked with animals, supervised with a vet or not, but there's no set number of hours, and that's because we understand and we actually want a diverse cohort. So we want people who maybe, have worked in clinical settings for years, but there's also people who maybe, are in college and having to work their way through and a job happens to not be in veterinary medicine, and that's okay, we get it. So we want to make sure that nobody is penalized because of their personal situation and that everybody has the opportunity to apply. So these are the prerequisite courses that we require. We are accepting grades of C- or better in all of these courses. So you can see here, we want 2 courses of biology. The physical sciences, we need the 2 courses in chemistry. For the OChem and biochem, you could do 1 of each, or you could do 6 credits of OChem, 6 credits of biochem. And you can see here we have the quarter credits too. So if you're on a quarter credit system, just be aware that, you know, the credits, the numbers are a little higher, right? But it's still basically 2 classes that you would be taking. 2 classes of bio, 2 classes of chemistry, OChem or biochem, 2 classes of physics, and that might be different for some of you. We do require that, or biophysics, so just be aware of that. I know some programs don't necessarily require that or offer that, so just be aware that you would need to take 2 classes in physics. There's 1 math class. There are, let's see, English comp is, you know, pretty difficult class, or if you somehow, if you waive that with an AP, that's fine. Then arts and humanities and social sciences, we require 2 courses of each for a grand total of 42 semester credits, or that would be about 64 or so quarter credits. And this information is all on our website. Okay, so in terms of the application process, you will apply through VMCAS. You probably know it's open for this year. You can choose our program now, and then the deadline is September 15th. So be aware of that deadline. It is super strict. We will not be looking at applications submitted after that deadline. This is what the application portal looks like. I'm sure some of you may already be in there, or maybe you've already applied. But the first 3 sections, the personal information, academic history, and supporting information, those are part of the general application. And then the 4th quadrant, program materials, that's where you get into program specifics for our program or whatever programs you've chosen to apply to. So in terms of the timeline, we are going to start reviewing applications probably later this summer. In the fall, we will do virtual interviews. We do plan to have an MMI due to the pandemic. We don't know whether that will be an in-person MMI as it was last year, or it could very well become a virtual MMI. We will have that determined by October, if not sooner. And then in the spring, we will notify applicants whether or not they were admitted. That'll probably be around mid-late March. And of course, hopefully you have until April 15th to commit to a school of your choice. So we do really, truly embody a holistic approach to reviewing applications. So we're looking for lots of things. So there are many ways you can distinguish yourself, and everybody's different, and that's good. So we don't want like a kind of cookie cutter approach. So I can't say jump through these 10 hoops and you'll get into the program, but want to make sure that you are given the opportunity to let us know what's awesome about you, right? So of course you'll have the essays that are in VMCAS. There's one specific essay related to our school. So you just want to be really careful when you do that essay, really pay attention to it. It's about University of Arizona values and how you fit with those values. Just take your time with that. We really closely look at that one. Let's see, of course, the application materials themselves, we want to make sure that, you can think critically, and you've got some, attributes that we're looking for. I would say also in terms of the letters of recommendation, just make sure that your recommenders are providing you with a positive recommendation. So it's okay to ask. It's okay to say, hey, Dr. So-and-so, will you recommend me for the University of Arizona vet med program or other vet med programs? And just make sure, say, hey, do you feel comfortable doing this? Can you give me a really strong recommendation? And if you don't, that's okay. I'll find somebody else, because it takes a lot of time for your recommenders to write those letters. And you want them to be like, yes, like for sure, I think you're a great student, or I think you've been great working in our clinic or our facility, and I really feel good about recommending you. You want somebody like that who's actually really enthusiastic about recommending you. And if they're kind of meh, just move on and find somebody else. It's totally fine. Like I said, we will have interviews, so there will be virtual interviews and possibly in person as well. But there will be kind of 2 times. If you make it through the whole process, you will have 2 options or 2 opportunities to interview. And of course, we want non-animal experiences as well. And that would include working with people, right? You won't just be working with animals as a vet, you'll be working with people too. So if you've got experience working with individuals in the community, that's awesome. Or it could be, sports, other forms of work, all of that stuff counts and is important. In terms of our class mix, so we accept 65 out-of-state students and 45 in-state students. So there is a point in the process where probably after the first interviews, we will start to look at those two groups separately. Because whoever we're inviting to the MMI, we just need to make sure that we invite enough people to get to those numbers, basically. This was our applicant pool from last year, but I can tell you we have already received, like, we've got about 1,200 applications in progress right now. So it will get increasingly competitive. And likely to be more competitive for out of state than in state, simply because the volume of applications from out of state is going to be so much higher. And we have 110 students this year, and we will have 110 students for the next, I think, next 3 years until we've graduated a class, and we may bump that number up to 120. So we are really hopeful about creating more diversity in veterinary medicine. As you guys probably know, it's not a very diverse field, but we're hoping to change that. So you can see we have a very diverse cohort this year. We're really excited about that. Let's give you a minute to look at those stats. And we do have this infographic, I believe it's on our website. Lori, correct me if I'm wrong about that. And this year we did have a lot of applicants from the University of Arizona. I won't say there's an advantage if you attended the University of Arizona, but we do have a really strong College of Agriculture and Life Sciences, so it is an awesome program. And of course, since this past year was our very first year, everybody in the state of Arizona was more aware of our program than maybe students out of state were. That said, we have students from across the country, and we're really excited about that. And we are open to international students as well. Okay, so this is our team. Myself, Lori, Tanisha Price-Johnson is our Associate Dean for Student Affairs, and Katie Barrington joined us recently as the Director of Student Affairs and Admissions, and we're adding people to the team all the time. In fact, we are hiring, we've hired a financial aid advisor, and we will have a financial aid director in place by fall. We have several learning specialists as well, and there will be a counselor or psychologist too. All right, so this is how you can contact us, especially now that we are working remotely and probably will be for the foreseeable future. The best thing to do is just email us at dvm-admissions@arizona.edu. Okay, I'm going to pause there and turn this over to Lori. Lori, would you like to open your own PowerPoint so you can drive it, or do you want me to just keep going?
Could you keep going if that's possible?
I can.
And so because we both are going to be kind of monitoring the presentation, it might be hard to respond to chat questions, but at the end of the presentation, we will answer questions at the end. So make sure, like, if you haven't gotten an answer yet, make sure to ask it at the end. Okay, so hi everyone. This is a lovely picture of our Oro Valley campus. We have both the buildings on the left and on the right. The right is the building where a majority of the classes will be taking place. And the left is going to be more of the Student Services Center. So that will include like the Wellness Center. It'll also hold a majority of our staff, like offices, such as admissions and student affairs. Okay, and so this is the beautiful entrance to our building. And so you can just imagine yourself walking inside. Then you'll be immediately greeted with like a hallway, and then you will see our lockers. So we have over 400 lockers, which is actually more than we need, really. Each cohort will be 110 students. In the future, we will bump it up to 120 in the next like 5 years per cohort. So every student will be guaranteed their own locker. Since only the year 1 and year 2 students will really be using the Oro Valley facility for classes, that ensures that everyone will have their own dedicated private space to store their items. And then you can also see we have several water fountains throughout the building too. Yeah. Okay, and this is our student lounge space, at least a rendering of it. We actually just commonly call this the kitchen. So this is the place where there's going to be multiple fridges available for students to put their lunches. There's going to be microwaves, we're getting some vending machines for students, and really it's just a place to kind of relax, enjoy your food. You can meet with your small groups or just your friends while you're like waiting between classes, that sort of thing. And so there's also like a dedicated space through like the door in the very back over there, which is another student lounge area. Okay, and now we're going to start to move into our clinical skills lab. So we have 2 clinical skills rooms. This room itself can hold 60 students in addition to the other room, which can hold 60 students. These tables are easily movable and adjustable. They can be raised higher or they can be lower, and that's the position you see right here. And that's because you will be working with several different simulation animals, and there's going to, depending on the size, the table adjustment height will be really helpful for you. So this is kind of the place where you are going to be practicing how you would see animals and and you'll be working with the instructors and using those simulations. Their tables are really for small groups. So picture about 4 to 6 students at each table. And what's really nice about our rooms is that they have monitors throughout them. So that way the instructor can easily pull up a slide or some type of screen. So that way no one's always hovering like over like a table. Everyone can readily see what the instructor wants you to. And so we mentioned that we will be using some simulation animals at the Oro Valley facility. And these are just some models that you can see. We will be using like equine models, bovine models, canine and feline, and also you can practice your sutures. On the right-hand side, you can start to see what techniques you will be learning with these simulation animals. And really, you just want to make sure you can practice and master these skills before working on live animals, because you want to make sure you can really hone your craft. Okay, and now we'll be moving into the collaborative learning space. So as we've kind of mentioned throughout the presentation, we use a very active team-based model, and we have that curriculum set up. So when students are going to be at the facility in like classes, they'll be working with a lot of small groups. And so these tables easily like come together and spread apart. That way, no matter the size of the group you're working with, you can always have enough seating, and there can always be different table arrangements. So when you come to class, like on a typical day, what's going to happen is there's going to be like a knowledge check. So the instructor will have given you some preparation material in advance. So on your own, what you'll be doing is, watching presentations, reviewing slides or videos, reading chapters from the specific books that they want you to. And then you're going to come to class with that knowledge already kind of in your head. And they're just going to perform like a simple knowledge check. So maybe it's a couple multiple choice questions up on the screen. And then what's going to happen is you're going to work within a small group to then double check your answers. You're going to see and really hear from the team that you're working with what they think those answers are. And so that way you can kind of hear a variety of different opinions on what they think the correct answer is. And this really helps people's learning ability. You start to understand real life cases and start to really take on other people's perspectives, which is super helpful. And then they will tell you, what the right answers are, and they'll review any problematic questions. So that way there is, the closing of that knowledge gap if you're unsure on a topic. And then you'll kind of move on into more application-based items and activities such as like case studies. And you'll be doing that in a class. And so this classroom, there's another identical one exactly like it. You can kind of see right here. And again, this space, one room can hold 60 students and the other room can hold the other 60 students of the cohort. Okay, and now everyone's like most favorite thing is the anatomy lab. What's really cool about this space is we have put in, all these brand new like fume hoods. These tables have literally never been touched before. And what's really cool is that we have these fume hoods so they kind of suck up all those, smells and chemicals, so you're, still able to breathe in like fresh air more so. This anatomy lab isn't like in the basement or underground. It's not dark like you kind of see in a lot of other programs anatomy labs. We have these beautiful windows on the side, and so light from the Arizona sun just kind of streams in, and you can even still see like the mountains and throughout like our building outside. And what's nice about our anatomy lab is, students will be still working in those small groups. We're hoping in the first couple of weeks, they'll be working with bone boxes, and starting about week 7 to 8, you'll start working on cadavers and dissections. Mainly, we will use canine cadavers, and then every couple of weeks, we'll kind of rotate the cadavers throughout the group, so that way you can still see a variety of different specimens. Okay, and this is our microscopy lab. So this is where you'll be learning all about pathology. So we will have tons of different microscopes for students to use. What's really nice about those microscopes is that their camera is like Wi-Fi enabled. So you're actually able to like save a picture of the slide that you're looking at. And then you can actually, save that on your own laptop. You can, send it then into the instructor later on if you have questions, or you can, show it to other groups and display it on all the screens. This is kind of an older picture. So on those pillars on the left and right-hand side, you will actually have monitors there. So again, every student can kind of see what's on the screen throughout the entire classroom. Okay, and now we're going to move out of the Oro Valley facility and start going to the Campus Agricultural Center. It's kind of nicknamed the farm, if anyone's familiar with that. This is, some miles south of that Oro Valley facility, but we are imagining that students will not have to travel to multiple locations on the same day. We're trying to be very mindful of student schedules, so that way they're not always driving back and forth across town. But here you can kind of just see an overview or a bird's eye view of how big the farm is and what facilities that we're using. Several of the facilities are under construction and are being renovated because we want to make sure we have the most up-to-date clinical skills settings available. So here's some renderings of the equine unit, the small animals clinical skills center, and the beef unit. For that small animals skills center and surgery center, that is scheduled to be completed by next summer, summer 2021. And so that way it will be in use, it will be ready in time for our first class to start actually using that facility. Okay, and this is going to be our bovine education extension facility, also called the beef unit. This is currently under construction and it will be complete by the end of the year of 2020. And there's several different cows already at the CAC if you ever take a drive-by or view our Facebook stories and Instagram. And then this is the equine unit from the outside. And then here's what it's going to look like on the inside. And so the Equine Center is currently under construction and it will be completed in mid-October. So once at the end of October, maybe November, if you ever want to take a drive by, you can kind of then look at that facility from the outside. Okay, so now we're kind of going to change gears to show you what the academic calendar will really look like. As we've mentioned, this is a 3-year program, so it does go year round. So instead of having a traditional summer break, what happens is that we have several 1 week to 2 weeks long breaks kind of spread throughout the year. And so this can kind of give you an idea of what your schedule would look like if you started our program. You can kind of see on the red line, that's our professional skills. We do think it's very important that students start learning these skills from day one. And so this can include things such as how to talk with those patients, how when you're working in a clinical setting, how you're going to be scheduling appointments, what kind of tests you want to either have in-house, or what kind of tests you want to use do some outsourcing and maybe partner with someone else in different laboratories, how to bill insurance, that sort of thing. We do know that a lot of students will want to start their own practice one day, so we want to make sure you have those skills available for you. Also, we will be teaching you clinical skills in this clinical skills lab. and then also some One Health courses. And then obviously we will be teaching you all about the animals and anatomy. A lot of students always ask what that self-defense class is in those first 2 blocks, and that's more of like the immune system. So think more like skin. Toward the end of the second year, this is when students will actually start to pick their selectives, and it's basically like an emphasis in whatever you'd like to study. We don't have the selectives like listed out there, but that could be things such as like a public health emphasis, a research emphasis, canine or feline, any wildlife emphasis, that sort of thing, or bovine, equine. And then that third year is when you will start doing your clerkship rotations. So as we mentioned, we have 7 core rotations that you will be doing. You also have the NAVLE prep block, and the NAVLE prep block is the only one that is actually like anchored to that time, because the NAVLE is only offered during certain parts of the year. And then also you'll have 4 electives, or elective rotations, where you can actually choose where you'd like to go. You can choose one of our partners that we have, or you could also, if you have like your own, like that clinic where you are at that you're working with and you'd like to go back there, we can set up a contract with them. And so that way you'd be able to be there for 4 weeks learning from them. Anything you'd like to add, Tara, about that?
Yeah, I don't think so. I probably should get to these questions. They have a lot of them.
Yeah.
We can always go back if needed.
Perfect.
But I will stop screen sharing. We can take a peek at all your questions. Let's see.
Yeah, and thank you guys for being patient with us.
All right, let's scroll back up here. Let's see. Is VCA a partner hospital? Yes. Let's see. Do you have partnerships with large animal clinics as well as small? Yes. These are easy. Let's see. Are all the partner hospitals in Tucson? No, actually, we've got partnerships throughout Arizona and the Metro Phoenix area, south of us as well. So they are actually, there are many in Tucson, but they're not all in Tucson. Let's see, is admissions rolling? It is not. It's an annual cycle. And that's really driven by VMCAS, right? So it's open a certain window every year, and it's one cycle. I suppose there would be a way to maybe add in a second cycle outside of that, but we don't plan to do that. How do we factor in graduate degree GPAs? So they're factored in just like all your other classes, basically. VMCAS will provide a GPA per institution attended. They're honestly, you can wait up with like 10 or 15 GPAs through VMCAS. But let's say you took chemistry as an undergraduate, let's say you didn't do really well. And then you took chemistry as a graduate student and you did better. For the science GPA, VMCAS will kind of add up those GPAs. But for our prerequisite GPA, you have the option of choosing basically the strongest classes. So if your graduate work was stronger than your undergraduate work, you could use the graduate work to meet our prerequisites. This is a good one. How many of the prerequisites do we need to have completed prior to applying? So we want you to have either completed or at least be in progress with half of them. So that would be like, you'd have to have started biology and chemistry and biochem, have taken the math class, have taken the English class. So at least one class from each subject, if you will. And you do have until, can't think of the date, Lori, maybe you know, early summer to complete.
June 30th is the specific date.
Yeah. Let's see. Will more than 3 LORs be accepted? Yes. I'm Canadian. Do I need to submit a WES evaluation? Let's see. I believe so, but that's a better question for VMCAS.
Yes, they will need to submit a WES evaluation.
Let's see. Would you accept the 5-hour survey of OChem, which is the OChem 1, 2, 3 in one semester? That's a good question. I don't know. I'd probably want to turn that over to faculty and see what their opinion is of that.
We would recommend the courses that like a science major would have to take. So I would recommend you would take, you know, organic chemistry 1 and like organic chemistry 2, or OChem and biochem, not the survey. And that would just make you more competitive of an applicant.
Or you could maybe take another class basically and you combine the hours. That might be another option. Let's see. Let's see. Physiological biochem. I think that would be okay, Lori. Have you come across that before?
I think we would have to take a look at like the course description and like the syllabus for it to really answer that question more thoroughly.
Let's see. It can be 2 different biology classes as long as, you know, they're building on one another. Let's see. Already answered that one. So who should letters of rec be from? That's a great question. Most programs would like at least 1 letter from a veterinarian. We're a little more flexible, especially given the current situation. I know, you know, a lot of people's internships and jobs, you know, aren't what they thought they would be this year with the pandemic. So for us, we like 1 letter to be from somebody who's actually seen you work with animals. So that could be a vet, it could be another type of clinician, that would be fine. And, you know, professors are great letter writers as well, so that could be an option. Possibly if you are working outside of vet med and you have a supervisor who could write you a letter and speak to things like leadership and that type of thing, your work ethic, that would be okay for 1 letter. Let's see. Does the chemistry series have to be taken at the same institution? No. Let's see. When selecting prereqs from our VMCAS entered coursework, should I select all courses that apply? Is a prerequisite GPA calculated? I'm not quite sure I understand that question.
So when you're like matching the VMCAS like prereqs, I would recommend only using 1 to match. So for example, if you have like 3 different math classes you took, use the one with like the highest math grade. So that way you could calculate your prereq GPA correctly.
Let's see. Scanning through here. Let's see. In terms of using other biology type courses to fulfill the biology requirement, Lori, we had anybody apply with genetics, do you know?
So we've been really focusing on like the general biology and microbiology courses. Because in order to take genetics, you will have taken the previous like lower division coursework anyway.
Let's see. All right. Scanning through here, folks. Bear with us. Are we part of the WICHE program? Great question. No. Lori answered that. We may be in the future, but we're not right now. We're not bringing the program to Douglas, although we actually have a facility in Douglas that we'll be using during one of the clinical rotations, but we don't have any plans at this point in time to launch the program in other locations. Will the classes be online for the class of 2021? So this fall, we're starting probably in a hybrid mode where anything that you were actually doing with animals will still be, you know, a class in person, but we're breaking the group into like much smaller groups than we had originally planned. And some work will be online, and of course that's a fluid situation, right? As soon as we can get to a place where we can have everybody back in person, we will. But of course we want to make sure that everybody is safe too, and that includes our faculty, of course. And our dean happens to be an epidemiologist, so that's super helpful for us as well.
The next question I saw was regarding if you were considered an out-of-state student, if you like from a different country. The University of Arizona has very specific state residency guidelines. So I posted a link in the chat box. And so you'd really want to follow that and pay attention to what the registrar and how they would classify you to determine if you're an Arizona resident or international student.
But international students would be considered with the out-of-state students in terms of reviewing applications. Do we provide housing? We do not. So you will need to find housing in the community or possibly look at University of Arizona graduate housing or family housing. But most students we expect will be renting apartments or maybe renting houses. And I would say a house share is a great idea, especially if you plan to bring animals with you. And actually, Tucson area is fairly inexpensive for housing in comparison to the rest of the country. So, if some of you are in a position, to maybe purchase a home or a condo, that's something that you might actually consider to be an option. Will student progress and feedback from the inaugural class be used to make adjustments for the following cohorts? Yeah, of course. Let's see. Well, we need to buy parking passes. Sorry, Lori, what were you going to say?
That question.
Oh, okay. Take it away.
Yeah, so actually no, which is really nice. So for the Campus Agricultural Center and for the Oro Valley location, we have no plans on, making students buy parking passes. So right now, that parking there at those two places is free. For HSIB, that is on main campus, and so what's going to happen is you'll probably be there maybe once a week. It wouldn't necessarily make sense to buy a parking pass since they can be so expensive. You might just want to pay for like parking for that day, which would be like $8 or maybe even like $4, depending on how long you would be there. But you could get a parking pass if you wanted to for HSIB.
Let's see. So in terms of where out-of-state students should reside, I would imagine you'd want, there's plenty of housing in Tucson. It's relatively inexpensive. It would be, if you're thinking, should you live in Oro Valley or in Tucson? I would say that's mostly personal preference. You could actually live in between, and that would be great. But, it's maybe half an hour drive between the locations, so it's not particularly onerous. And we do have information on housing on the student pages. So hopefully, I think you all should have a personalized page, right, Lori, if they signed up for?
Yes, I don't believe housing information is on there, though.
Oh, okay. That's something maybe we could add, but that's certainly information that we're communicating to students once they matriculate.
And thank you, Zach, for answering and providing some information about the cost of apartments in the area. We really appreciate that.
Transportation, we're looking into that. Have you heard any more about that, Lori?
No. So, what me and Tara both know is that there's been maybe some talks about having transportation, but there's money like set aside for it if necessary, but there's nothing concrete at this moment.
So I would say just, living in Arizona, it's better to have a car, or, if you want to use Uber and Lyft, you can do that, or maybe have a roommate with a car. If you don't have access to a car, outside of the program, it would be somewhat, I think, difficult because Arizona is just built for automobiles. Big, wide open spaces, lots of parking lots. It really is kind of a car town. There are maybe some exceptions to that, but you would probably want to make sure either you have a car or, a really good friend or roommate has a car. I would recommend that. Although actually a lot of people bike in Tucson, so bikes are really popular. Actually bicycle bikes, so that could be something to consider as well. You could always move and then figure it out, right? See what your comfort level is. Let's see. So in terms of employment, we don't really have plans to employ our own students, if that's what you mean. We do understand that students will need to work, and most of your classes will take place, it should be like maybe a 4 or 5 hour block every day. So you have some opportunity to work, but ideally you'd probably want to start the program, kind of get your feet wet, and then figure out what your comfort level is, and then maybe look for something thereafter. Of course, lots of our partners want to hire our students, so that would certainly be an opportunity down the line. I wouldn't say there's an emphasis in any particular area. However, starting midway through the second year, you will have the opportunity to choose those selectives to kind of hone your own interests. We do have a relationship with the Tucson Zoo, and we are paying like this half the salary of the veterinarian at the zoo, so that person will be available to us. And then of course in your clinical rotations, you've got 4 elective rotations, and you could choose to emphasize that you want to on exotics or whatever.
As of right now, there are no plans to add in housing like closer to like the Oro Valley location, but I do recommend, again, trying to get roommates with people in the cohort. We've kind of set up like a good community of our accepted students, and a lot of them are planning on rooming together to cut down on costs.
Talked about some of this stuff already. It is a systems-based approach, yes. When will the university be accredited? So the university is accredited. It's the program that has provisional accreditation, and no program receives full accreditation until we've actually graduated a class. That's how that works. However, there's no downside for a student who joins the program while they're in the process of accreditation. You have all the same rights as would any student in a fully accredited program or in a program that's on probation for that matter, which does happen.
And we are working very closely with the AVMA to make sure we do get accredited. In fact, next week we even have a site visit lined up.
And they want us to succeed. Nobody wants to see a new program fail. That does not help the community of veterinary medicine at all. Let's see.
And yes, we do have a partnership with the Reed Park Zoo.
Yep. Are the professors all vets or science instructors? It's a blend of both. So we've got some who are continuing to be working practitioners and maybe teaching part-time. We have some who have maybe a PhD and also a DVM. Some may not have the DVM but have more of a science background. So it's truly a mix.
So we do not require the GRE for our application, though there are lots of other veterinary schools that do ask you to have a GRE score.
But again, we're not going to look at those scores, so we can actually suppress that information in the system. So if you submit a GRE to VMCAS, no one reviewing your file for our program will be privy to that information. Yeah, so you might want to just check our faculty. We do have bios on the website, and we're hiring more people literally every week. They're amazing individuals. Many, if not all, probably the majority, do have hands-on experience working, in clinical settings. They're just a great group. Honestly, I don't know what to say. They're just such amazing individuals, and they have all these different interests outside of vet med too. We've got somebody who's a professional dancer, people who are into hiking and travel, just a really, really great group of people. And they've all chosen to join us, so it's kind of a unique opportunity, not just for you guys, but for us too, as staff and as faculty. And we've attracted faculty from throughout the country who are really bought into, our values and, our 3-year model, the team-based learning approach, and the opportunity for faculty specifically to join a college that's new and have a hand in actually developing the curriculum versus walking into an existing system and just kind of picking up where somebody else left off. It's a huge opportunity. So we've got people who are, I guess we would say, kind of entrepreneurial. You don't think of faculty that way, but I think everybody who's joined the college truly has that sort of entrepreneurial vibe and is just really excited at this chance to create something new. So everybody's super engaged. It's a great time to join the program.
Yeah, and what's really cool is they're also kind of being taught how to teach this team-based learning approach, since it is, very different than what other schools do, and it's very different than what traditional lectures are. So we want to make sure they're teaching effectively and using the model correctly. So we're making sure that they're mastering how to teach, so that you guys can master all the things that you're learning.
We've talked a little bit about COVID, so we are moving some coursework for fall online. The things that are truly kind of hands-on, we expect to deliver in a hands-on format, but in much smaller groups than maybe originally planned. For this year, also know that we have space for 240 students plus, but we're only going to have 110. So it's actually a lot of physical space, so we're actually fortunate in that sense. But we'll just kind of have to see how things go, and we are ready and prepared in case we have to move 100% online. We do have contingency plans for that as well. I don't know if you could do one of the 4-week elective rotations at another vet school teaching hospital. I would think that's a possibility if you got permission from both that teaching hospital and also from our faculty. But that's something that we would need to explore together.
For the next question, we actually do take coursework from a long time ago, so we don't have an expiration date on courses. However, our faculty have strongly recommended that you really familiarize yourself with the science courses, especially organic chemistry, biology, because you will be, building upon those foundational knowledge. And so we want to make sure that you are prepared for our rigorous coursework. So I would really recommend to prepare yourself to have a competitive application, maybe, even if it's just auditing some science courses, or just retaking a couple of them just to make sure you have that knowledge again and be ready to use it.
Is there a DVM MD or DVM PhD program? Not yet. We are working on possibly offering a DVM PhD at some point in time. We did have a student who was in a master's program at U of A, was considering doing both, but that person elected to just focus on the DVM. So we are open to it, and it's something that you could speak. Dr. Jamie Bomer is heading up graduate education for us, so that is something that you could discuss with her, but as of right now, there's no formal program in place. There's no dual degree yet. So if you're completing classes now, you will need to submit transcripts, even if all they show is in progress. And then yes, after there's a point in time if you are admitted where you will need to submit final transcripts. And those transcripts will come directly to us. Is this a tracking school? I'm not quite sure what that question is.
I'm not sure either.
Yeah. So Madison, if you could maybe elaborate, we'll try and get back to you on that one.
Is it a tracking school, as in, do you pick a specialty at some point in the program, if you want to focus on large animal or exotics, etc.?
Not really. We are more a generalist program. You will have opportunities to select what we call selectives, right? Like we talked about, or to maybe take those 4 elective rotations and focus on a specific area. And, on your resume, if you wanted to describe that, you could, but it's not as though you will, your degree will be a DVM degree. It won't be a DVM degree with an emphasis in X, Y, Z. So if you're a sophomore in college, you could probably, depending if you've got the prerequisites done or will have them completed by next June, you could apply now. That would be fine. That's certainly an option. We had some, I know U of A specifically, some students who were in their junior year and thought, well, I might as well apply now. If I don't get in, I'll just reapply next year. They can keep going with a bachelor's degree. So that's something that you could consider. You probably will be a stronger candidate if you've completed your degree, but we are open to the possibility that somebody could really be ready. Or maybe we've got some folks too who maybe have changed careers, maybe got through an associate's degree, went to work as a vet tech, and are certainly well prepared to do the program. So it's really based on the individual, which is again why we do the holistic application review.
I would agree. And also just keep in mind that, with financial aid purposes, you want to kind of consider those. Students will have more access to financial aid after they've completed 90 college credits. So typically, if you're applying like more junior year, that is more so when you'd have access to just a higher aid amount, which is helpful.
Yeah.
And more time in undergrad is not a bad thing. It's just more time to strengthen your application, get more animal hours, build some stronger letters of recommendations with your references, and that sort of thing.
We have a whole wellness center planned, and it's under construction right now, and it should be, at least parts of it should be ready to go by August. We do have tutoring. We've hired, I think, at least 2 learning specialists. We're going to hire another one. There is going to be like an area for yoga and meditation, lots of collaborative study space as well. So yes, we're very cognizant of the fact that the stress in these types of programs is high. We're hoping, and our expectation is that with a team-based learning approach, it won't be quite as stressful. But yes, we get it, and we want to make sure everybody is safe and healthy and taking care of your mental health, emotional health. We've also got we reached out to the incoming students, and we've got like a list of 10 or 15 clubs planned. One of them is a hiking club. I'm a big fan of hiking, so I'm super excited about that one. I'll probably join you guys in some hikes. So we just definitely want to make sure that you guys feel healthy across the board. So again, you probably will spend 4 or 5 hours in class, whether class is at the farm or it's on our campus. Let's see. So I think, Madison, maybe you're talking about that clinical year where for the first 2 years, no, you can get a 2-year lease if you want in a house in the Tucson area. That's totally fine. For that 3rd year, you're kind of moving around a little bit, right? So in fact, there's one rotation I just found out is going to be, and let me check. So the food animal rotation looks like it's going to be at the U.S. Meat Animal Research Center in Nebraska. So I think there's housing there for everybody. That's information I just found out. And down in Douglas, where one of our rotations is, there's housing down there. But there are going to be times where you're going to need to find temporary housing. And faculty assure me this is very common and students manage it. And so, of course, we'll try and support you as best we can. But it's a little bit of a learning curve for us too on the student affairs side. We've got 2 years to plan for that as well. Lori, I don't know if you have anything more.
Nope, nothing to add.
Yeah. Our student-teacher ratio, that's a great question. Actually, I don't know. We're hiring faculty like literally every week. I'm not sure what the long-term plan is, though. That's a good question. I don't have an answer, but we can look into that. Maybe somebody knows. Lori, I don't know if you've heard anything about that. No.
I haven't. Yeah, we're just constantly growing, so I think the ratio keeps changing.
Yeah, exactly.
So.
So will the NAVLE prep block be offered in an active learning environment? I would imagine so. No one's actually, that's another question I've never heard before. I can't imagine it wouldn't be, since our entire curriculum is built that way. I can't imagine we're gonna just like revert to some sort of lecture-based for NAVLE specifically, but that's something we'll probably need to double check with faculty on. Are annual costs likely to increase? I really couldn't answer that. We're not really in control of those costs, frankly. It's really at the level of the provost, the president, and the Arizona Board of Regents. So that's really not something I could comment on either way. So we do, again, look at applications holistically. So work experience would count. You need to meet the bar for the GPA. So if you have a 3.0, you're good to go. Well, you will move on to the next stage of the process. It's just those who are in that 275 to 299 range that we're gonna like take a little bit more time and make sure that we think they're ready before we move them on to the other parts of the process. But if you've got at least 3.0, you're fine.
The next question, do you accept biology of animals if it's only one class? So as we kind of showed you on our presentation for the prerequisites, we require a minimum of 6 semester credits. And so most likely that would be 2 courses. So even if it's like 4 credits of bio, do you have to like still take another 2 credits of bio? Yes, because we require a minimum of 6.
Yep.
How many hours of learning are outside of the classroom? I mean, that kind of depends on you. We are expecting students to spend about 25 to 35 hours a week studying on their own because, you know, with active learning, there is a lot of preparation out of class to make sure that you can go to class prepared. But we are expecting about 25 to 35 hours outside of the classroom.
Yes, June 30th, 2021 for prerequisites to be completed. Now we've talked about the provisional accreditation. We should be good there. Yeah, go ahead, Lori.
Yeah. So we are accepting spring and summer 2020 courses that have like a pass grade and don't have an actual letter grade, and that's totally fine. We're unsure about the fall as of this time because it just depends on what institutions are doing. However, no more than half of your prerequisites can be pass-fail.
Yep, and we do expect to make final decisions probably around mid-March of every year. So in terms of the next step in the process, we hope to invite, so if you've applied by September 15th, probably sometime in August is when we'll start to review those applications and to start inviting people to the second stage, which is kind of a virtual interview. But that'll be kind of a rolling thing, as you know, we've got a lot of applications to get through. But the earliest you would hear anything would probably be maybe mid-late August, I would say. And that would just to let you know whether we're going to pass you on to the next stage of the process, or whether your application is undergoing, a more in-depth review because you don't meet the GPA requirement, or you're just a little bit below, or if you just flat out are below a 275, then we just won't consider your application further, and we'll let you know that.
As for the question about transfer credits, you will have to submit official transcripts from each institution you've attended directly to VMCAS. And so we will utilize the letter grades you've received from each class. We don't just do like the credits. Unless then you're talking about IB, AP, and CLEP, because then we can accept those credits for prereqs.
We actually don't, let me think, at this time, do we have a GPA for the admitted class, Lori?
Not at this time. We are working on that, but many of our students are finishing up their prereqs, and so we could have a better number for you in the fall once everything is submitted and complete.
And since we're not requiring a specific number of hours, that's data that we likely won't have. Let's see.
So philosophy is considered more of like an arts and humanities, not a social science.
Yeah. I'm not really sure how to address if you're out of state. You will be doing rotations like everybody else. You could choose to do a couple of rotations in your home state if that's someplace you wanted to return to. We don't expect everybody's going to stay in Arizona. We hope many of you do, of course. We do have a shortage of vets in Arizona, so it'd be great if a lot of you stayed. But we know a lot of you will want to go back home, or you'll have a partner who needs to relocate or whatever. So again, that's just like anybody else trying to find any other job, really, right? We'll provide as much support as we possibly can in terms of resume review and that kind of thing. But you would also want to take advantage of networking opportunities and attending conferences and that kind of thing throughout your time as a student. Keeping in touch with people from undergrad, from your faculty, from the clinical site where maybe you're working right now. You want to make sure that you maintain those contacts. So when you're ready to go, you can reach back out. And of course, our faculty are coming from all over, and our staff as well. So they have contacts in industry too. So we'll all do everything we can to help you find a placement that you're happy with.
And there will be, a dedicated staff person to help students as well.
Yeah.
So the next question, reviewing applications if they're under a GPA of a 3.0. Yeah, so if you fall between a GPAs between a 2.75 and a 3.0, what we're going to do is a further in-depth look at your application, just right up front. So we're going to look at, your GPA trends. So in the, what classes you took, last semester are more reflective than, classes you took 5 years ago. So we do want to make sure that we're looking at upward trends. We're also going to be looking at letters of recommendation. So people who know you, people who have seen you working with animals, we're going to be considering those as well.
And there's space this year to talk about the impact of COVID-19. So it could be that you were on this upward trajectory and then all of a sudden all your classes became pass-fail, right? And maybe that actually hurt you. So that would be something that we would look at too. Do you have a specialty in vet pathology? Not through our college. Trying to think, is that one of the specializations we're hoping to launch through CALS, or I'm trying to remember. I think there is the pathology lab, and I think we may be looking to offer some internships through that lab. That's sort of something that's under consideration.
I know the diagnostic center in Arizona, that's where one of the mandatory rotations will be. But
again, this is a generalist degree, so just keep that in mind. And if you want to specialize, usually that's something that you would do after achieving the DVM. Can we go over tuition costs? Sure. So these are on our site. Let me pull it up to make sure I'm not saying something wrong. Lori, feel free to jump in if I'm being slow. Let's see.
So for Okay. So for Arizona residents, it's $15,000 per semester, which since we're 3 semesters in a year, it would be $45,000 per year. For non-Arizona residents, it would be about $70,000 per year total. And then so you would multiply that by 3 to get the total cost of the program.
And there is money, as you probably know, for health professions students. So typical graduate students can borrow up to $20,500 every academic year, but there is additional monies for health profession students. So that's just something that you would note when you apply through FAFSA. And then of course, we have our own financial aid team here who can assist you too. And there are scholarships too. I forgot about that. So we have several $100,000 in scholarship money that we will provide. So there's an application process for that, but just know that that's an option too.
And again, we're not asking students to choose a specialty. This is a very generalist program, but you are welcome to kind of emphasize in a specific animal population or species if you'd like, using the selectives and the elective rotations.
C-, anything below C- won't be considered. So if you got a D in a class, you will need to retake that class or take a similar class somewhere else.
So we do have over 250 like partnerships, you know, kind of throughout the country. And so there's probably going to be like a lottery system drawn up, and students can kind of do a preference on which places they would like to be, but that system's still being fleshed out. But students don't necessarily have to find their own. I mean, for the elective rotations, if you have a place you'd like to go to, again, you can kind of set that up on your own.
Yes, the 4 to 5 hours would include clinical skills and labs. Of course, you may want to use the lab yourself after class if it's available, but yeah, that's what we're planning on. But of course, we do expect you're studying after that, right?
Are there requirements for how far away you can live? No, not at all. So a lot of our faculty actually live pretty far out from the facilities. And so we're talking like over like an hour. But yeah, you can be within 10-15 minutes just for your convenience. I personally live about 20 to 30 minutes away. So you can definitely live wherever you'd like to, as long as you can get to class.
Yeah, I've even talked to a couple of students who live in Metro Phoenix, and they've toyed with the idea of like actually driving back and forth every day. So which could be an hour and a half, 2 hours, you know, I mean, that's totally up to you. I wouldn't recommend that, but if, you know, when you have families, sometimes you need to make those types of considerations. Yeah, so that's totally up to you.
Someone asked about a very specific class, theory of application. What I would have you do is actually send our admissions email and send the course description with that, and like the course name, and possibly a syllabi if you have it, just so we can evaluate it further.
Yeah. Equine chiropractic, wow. There will be opportunities again for selectives and rotations and equine medicine in general. About chiropractic specifically, I'm really not sure. Lori, have you heard anything about that?
I have not.
Yeah, you might want to reach out to our faculty. I'm trying to think who's the one who does the work with the Florence facility. And I'm blanking right now. Anyway, if you send your question by email, we can dig into that a little bit further for you.
Currently, we do not have like a diagnostic lab, but we are partnering with the one in Tucson. It's on the west side. Tara, do you know any more about that?
I don't, honestly, I don't.
Yeah.
No, lack of full accreditation does not pose any issues or risks for students. Otherwise, nobody could ever launch school, right? So let's see.
And just to back up, we are trying again to have classes in like one location, if possible on a day. If that's not feasible, just given like social distancing and those measures that we're trying to do, there will be ample amounts of time. We're building the schedule with students in mind. We don't want you to spend 20 minutes between a class just rushing to the other location. It will be, you know, like an hour at least, so that way you can find ample time to transport yourself.
Yes, online classes are fine. They're treated the same as face-to-face.
Yes, and also another thing, we haven't mentioned this yet, but we don't require any labs for our sciences. Labs can be taken online if you'd like. Labs are strongly preferred, but not required by our prerequisites.
So let's see, reserve duty. I mean, if it's on the weekends, I'm sure that's not an issue. Yeah, I don't know. Lori,
I'm not sure, but we will have a couple military students like joining our class, so that may be something we would learn about in the future.
Yeah, I don't know if they'll be on reserve duty though, but that's a good question. I mean, we'd love to be flexible. I just don't know how realistic that is. So that's something that we probably need to kind of dig into later individually. Chris, I don't know how to answer your teaching faculty question. I don't know. We have some faculty that are tenured, some that are not tenured, some that are part-time. I don't have numbers though on that. I don't know. Yeah, sorry. You can, if you email us, we can ask. Let's see. We have admissions committee. So the admissions committees comprise primarily of faculty. Lori and I participate, of course, but it's a whole committee that will ultimately make decisions on who's admitted, and the AAVMC actually requires, or AVMA requires, that faculty are involved in those decisions. The testing in a team-based model, it depends really on the faculty member. There is some individual testing, so it could be some grades are based on group input, but there are opportunities as well for individuals to be tested as an individual, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. And there will also be some like kind of scores or grades you can give your other like group members as well. So that way there's some accountability there too.
Yeah.
We do have a really great disability resource center at the University of Arizona. And so what we would do is work closely with them to provide any accommodations that a student needs.
Yeah. So do you track LA or SA, or do both? Chris, I'm not sure what that means. Lori, do you know what that means?
I don't. Chris, could you maybe unmute yourself and explain?
I was answering Maya's question about, or I think it was a question about tracking and whether you track or not. That's all. Thanks.
Okay.
Thank you.
Can you try all selectives? That depends on how many we end up with. I don't know if you'll be able to try them all. That might be an overpromise. I wouldn't want to say that.
I think you get to choose like 5. And so like there's different kind of blocks, and you would choose like 5 different ones that you would like to do. So yeah, you can expose yourself to a lot of different specialties that way.
But you'll be exposed prior to, throughout the core curriculum. So by the time, a year and a half in, I would hope that you would have some feel for, your own interest by that point in time.
Where will clinical rotations be located? So it really just kind of depends on where you get placed. There are a couple blocks that do have like mandatory clinic that you have to go to. For example, like the shelter medicine one, we're probably going to have that mandated to be a shelter like in Phoenix. And so that way students would always have to choose that one. But there is again, you can put in some preferences for specific clinics you'd like to be at.
The V-Bar Ranch, are we actually using that facility, Lori? I'm not sure that we are.
So I know it was in the talks. I've definitely heard that being mentioned in conversations. I couldn't explain more about it though.
Let's see.
You would graduate with a Doctor of Veterinary Medicine, or DVM.
Yeah, let's see. We've talked about a lot of this. Is there a supplemental application fee? There may be. We haven't quite determined that yet, but I think there probably will be this year. Let's see. Scholarships we talked about. We're not doing in-person tours during the pandemic, no. Let's see. And if you've got specific questions about specific prerequisites, if you could just email dvm-admissions@arizona.edu, we'll try and respond to you individually.
So we would require 9 quarters credits. So maybe consider just taking like a chemistry lab or something, just so you can meet our minimum number of credit hours.
Graduate courses would be calculated in your GPA, your science GPA, your prerequisite GPA if you took graduate level classes, and your overall GPA as well. So the supplemental essay, that's part of VMCAS, so it's not really supplemental in that sense. But the next stage of the process, where you would be doing virtual interviewing, there may be a supplemental fee at that point in time. But when you just submit your basic application, it's just the usual VMCAS fees. Let's see. So again, if you've got in progress courses, you would need to submit final transcripts towards the end of the process, assuming you were offered admission, and admission is always offered contingent on us receiving your final transcripts. The Health Professions Scholarship Program with the U.S. military. I'm actually not familiar with that. That's probably a question for our financial aid officer. Lori, are you familiar with that?
Yeah, I mean, very vaguely. I would probably direct you to our financial aid person. But if, you know, they're giving you the opportunity and will pay for your schooling, then I'm sure we'll just accept it. So
yeah, we are a yellow ribbon school, so we certainly would work with veterans in that way for sure.
Students don't have to have, or institutions don't have to have a plus or minus grade point system. If you have an A, we'll accept your A and calculate your GPA that way. B, C, whatever.
And we do take AP credit for social sciences. That's not a problem. Let's see here. We've addressed a lot of these already. I'm just trying to kind of hurry through, get to something a little different maybe. Let's see. Message board for prospective students. We do have, for our enrolled students, we do. I don't know that we would for prospective students, although we have a Facebook and Instagram. You could certainly connect with us that way and speak with other prospective students that way. Once a student's admitted and accepts their offer, then we've got a group me going on. So there's like a student group me that the students themselves started. Then we also have like an official group me so that we can communicate with the students officially. I'm trying to read Sharon's question. I'm not quite sure how to answer this one. As long as you are, I think it would be helpful if you took a couple of courses more recently, but whether they're undergraduate or graduate level or upper, I mean, I don't know that it matters all that much, frankly.
Yeah, I would say that's dependent upon you and what knowledge you want a refresher on, or if, like, for example, if you still remember all of your principles of like chemistry and biology and organic chemistry, then maybe you don't want to retake those. Maybe you would just take the higher level courses so you can get access to new material. So I would say that's really a dependent question upon yourself.
Let's see. So we're only got a couple minutes left here. So if you do have questions that we haven't addressed, please do email dvm-admissions@arizona.edu and we'll do our best to respond to you guys.
I saw a question. Do you have to pick 4 different like elective rotations, or can you work through 2 rotations at the same place? I'm not sure. Has Jim talked about that? Choosing?
I think you can repeat. I believe so, especially if you took one of the core 7, excuse me, and you wanted to go back to that site. I think you can do that.
One question I saw was, on GPA, do you replace the highest grade? So we will do that for your prerequisite GPA. However, VMCAS calculates your science and your cumulative GPA. So they take into account every course you've ever taken.
Again, we look at applications holistically. So taking a year or 2 or 5 or 10 years off, it's not a problem for us at all. We value all kinds of experiences. I would just hope that you made use of your time. If you had a different career and you're coming back to vet med, that's great. If you took 6 months off to travel, lucky you, that's great too. There's really no preference for someone who went straight through undergrad and then started or applied to the program. All experiences are valid.
Yeah. And how do you make yourself outshine? I mean, we you have the opportunity to really highlight who you are as an individual through those personal essays we ask you to write, and through the letters of recommendations that are submitted to us in your VMCAS application. So that's a great way to really make yourself, you know, unique and stand out. So because only they can really paint the picture of who you are, like off of paper.
And Lori, are we able to post this recording somewhere? Do you know?
So if students would like to email us to our admissions email requesting the recording, we can definitely send it that way. I'm not sure how to just kind of do a group.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. And also we do these at least monthly, so you can always pop back into the next one, or just email us if you have some questions that that you didn't get answers to.
So if you've registered for that physics course in the fall, you're totally fine to apply and you would be eligible, because that would be considered in progress.
Yeah, so as long as we have a transcript that says the class is in progress, that would be acceptable. Or at least maybe not in progress, it's a little misleading, I guess. If it's like a session B class, right, and it starts in October, that would be okay as long as you had evidence that you were actually registered for the class and that showed on your transcript.
And when you're applying, 50% have to be in progress. So one of each of the sciences and the math course have to be
or completed.
Progress or complete.
Yeah. You could take another, it doesn't have to be intro biology, it could be something more advanced, that's totally fine.
Like, for example, if you want to substitute microbiology instead of your Bio 2 course because it's a higher grade, go for it. I see Rebecca shaking her head, like, yes.
And yeah, I think we've talked about most of this. You should be in class or class, however class looks like, right? You could be working with the animals, but it'll be at like probably around a 5-hour commitment every day.
Mm-hmm.
And then you'll have,
there's really long lunch breaks too, right? So maybe you'll have like class early in the morning or a lab early in the morning, and then the afternoon there would be the opposite.
Yeah.
If you're taking a prerequisite in the spring, that doesn't count as in progress, but all prerequisites do have to be completed by June 30th of next year.
So if you are taking Bio 1 this fall and are taking Bio 2 in the spring, that's fine.
Right. But if you're planning on taking Bio 1 in the spring and Bio 2 in the summer, that will not work for us.
Yep. So I think we shared a link, or someone shared a link. If you go to the University of Arizona Office of Articulation, was it called, Lori?
Yeah, transfer credit and articulation.
Yeah.
Also, on like our prerequisites page, we do have the direct chemistry courses that you should, or any of the courses that you should be taking at Pima Community College. So I would reference those.
Yeah, but if you go to that site and plug in the classes that you did take, it'll give you the U of A equivalent. So that's another way you can check to see if it's sufficient. Okay, let's see.
You didn't do so well in Gen Bio Lab. So it kind of depends on you. What you could do is like a prerequisite like GPA calculation to see like how that's really affecting your GPAs. And again, we don't necessarily require the lab, though it's strongly recommended. So I would say it's kind of up to you if you'd like to retake it.
Yeah, as long as if you want it to count towards your prerequisites, it has to be at least a C-. So I'm not sure what not so great is to you. If you got a C-, I probably, I guess, use your own judgment. If you want to feel good about your knowledge and abilities, I'm sure take it over. But yeah, and again, remember, it'll be averaged in. If you do take it over again, VMCAS is going to average it in. Yeah, so D is not going to cut it. So yeah, you probably want to take that over. Or if you have another class that you can use to apply to the prerequisite, that's okay too. It doesn't have to be the lab class.
So I saw a question about if you're transferring to a different school in the fall, like how you can show that. On your VMCAS application, you can put like future coursework you're planning on taking, and you can kind of list like where you'll be taking it at. So you can kind of show it that way. And then VMCAS will require transcripts from every institution.
Yep. So Brennan, looks like you're good to go.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys. This has been a lovely information session. I'm so glad that we've been able to answer so much questions.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. And hopefully we'll see some of your applications either this fall or maybe next year. Okay, have a good day, everybody.
Take care, everyone. Bye.
Bye-bye.